We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
10, 9, 8, 7.
NASA, with prime contractor Lockheed Martin, is building a new crew exploration vehicle called Orion. An army of engineers and astronauts are melding their skills to create a new generation of space explorers. Replacing the space shuttle, Orion will carry Earthlings back to the moon and beyond, to planets where no human has gone before. The clock is ticking. The first unmanned test flight is scheduled for 2009. So the engineers have little time to master a Rubik's Cube of systems, designing and testing the safest rockets ever. Flight controls that can navigate Orion at speeds faster than the fastest bullet. Thermal protection that can resist temperatures hot enough to melt every known metal, and provide a revolutionary landing system for Orion's safe return to Earth. If mankind's future lies beyond Earth, Orion will take us there. Beyond these doors, NASA engineers at Ames Research Center prepare a test run of a new crew exploration vehicle, Orion. Here, in the unitary wind tunnel, a model is about to be subjected to the forces of high-speed flight. To achieve the required wind speeds, this multi-stage compressor draws air from one end of a closed-loop tunnel. Special vanes turn the airflow around the corners to avoid any power loss. Fast-moving air is continuously recirculated within the loop to achieve the high speeds needed for the test. This innovative system can produce winds higher than Mach 2. That's more than twice the speed of sound.
Looks pretty good.
Because the powerful wind can also turn any forgotten tools or debris into destructive high-speed missiles, a team of technicians walks the entire length of the tunnel circuit before each test run, checking every nook to make sure it's absolutely clean. Meanwhile, a model, approximately 1/10 the size of Orion, is fitted with an array of force and pressure sensors. Collectively, these sensors produce a profile of the pressure exerted by the high-speed air flowing over the model. After a coat of white primer, the model reveals the latest proposal for Orion's optimal shape. Skip Hatfield is project manager for the new crew exploration vehicle.
We looked hard at all kinds of shapes for this vehicle, including capsules and lifting bodies and various combinations of wing vehicles. However, when you're looking at a mission beyond low Earth orbit, we just felt like from a safety standpoint and our ability to make an integrated schedule, that it was a much better choice to use a capsule-based design.
Reference points allow the engineers to plot Orion's movements during a test. Once in the atmosphere, the new Starship must be able to adjust its course to hit a landing site. This series of transonic wind tunnel tests will reveal whether or not the proposed shape has the aerodynamics required. Dr. James Bell is the principal aerodynamics investigator.
It is a spacecraft, but the CEV has got to start out by flying up through the atmosphere into space and end by coming back down through the atmosphere. And it's got to fly down to a controlled landing. It can't simply fall.
To determine just how well Orion will fly, engineers are looking at the crucial lift-to-drag ratio, which tells them how maneuverable this capsule will be in the atmosphere.
Scanner data, then we got to cross over.
Computer calculations have established that Orion's lift-to-drag ratio must be at least 0.4. In comparison, the soon-to-be retired shuttle has a ratio of 1.7 at 17,000 miles per hour. This indicates the spaceship could easily perform swooping turns to change course. But the capsule, traveling much faster at 25,000 miles per hour, doesn't need to do that. Still, Orion will require some maneuverability, using small effector jets instead of wings, for the course corrections needed to get home. To gather the most accurate data, engineers use cutting-edge techniques. One of them is this pressure-sensitive paint. Under ultraviolet light, it glows red. The higher the pressure on the surface, the brighter the glow. With this innovative paint, the airflow can be measured with extraordinary precision. Finally, the capsule model is fitted onto a test chamber support called the Sting.
You want to rotate it? Yeah, exactly. Straight? Okay.
To prevent any anomalies in the airflow, all wiring from the model to the data collection stations must run through the Sting.
Give me a drive start, please.
Data are gathered from the model's sensors in 3-minute runs. The red light emitted by the pressure-sensitive paint exposed to the ultraviolet lamps is captured and recorded as digital data.
That's pretty good because, yeah.
After processing the light wave data from the pressure-sensitive paint, with red indicating extremely high pressure and purple extremely low, the capsule's lift-to-drag ratio is 0.5, which will give it more maneuverability than needed. This test helped confirm Orion will be a blunt-nose ballistic capsule. The new crew exploration vehicle is at the heart of the Constellation program, which calls for astronauts to set up a lunar outpost and then explore Mars. A system of systems, NASA's new space project also includes rockets, cargo carriers, and landers. So that these components can be built and fit together, each element is designed with precision and care. And while the data gathered from the unitary wind tunnel test confirms Orion's basic shape, it's only the beginning of an intricate process to refine the design. Weight is a major factor. An earlier version of the capsule was too heavy. To reduce Orion's weight, the capsule's diameter is now 2 feet smaller. That, in turn, has affected the payload, as well as the capsule's aerodynamic capabilities. To quickly and precisely assess the domino effect of any such alterations, engineers rely on computer-aided design, or CAD. Here in the Ames Supercomputing Division, engineers analyze the impact of these and other revisions to Orion's design. William Chan is calculating airflow.
The CAD model is a solid model. Somebody comes up with a shape like this. There's probably a whole family of different shapes, different parameters, give you different diameters and lengths and things. And you get this model, and from this, you need to build the computational grids that you're going to use to compute a solution on.
A computational grid is overlaid on the CAD model. The grid provides reference points for the airflow analysis. To be as precise as possible, the grids the designers use contain as many as 100 million points.
And this is a representation of the surface that you're going to use to compute the flow on.
The flow computations utilize surface reference points with supplemental data for speed, altitude, and the capsule's angle of flight. The data is processed using a mathematical subset called CFD, or computational fluid dynamics.
Increase the drag.
Jerry Yan is Constellation's computational design team leader.
We have been using CFD models to design aircrafts, to design the shuttle, and it's a way for us to predict what a vehicle would do under different flight regimes. Computational fluid dynamics allow us to scan a wide design space relatively quickly to basically rule out designs that wouldn't work and then fine-tune on the few that work and to do trade-offs, whether certain designs would give you better flight characteristics and certain designs will get you better payload performance.
I will talk to them, see if they can send a Java in a scanner for me.
A theoretical solution to Jerry's and other questions comes from NASA's supercomputer, Columbia. Using more than 10,000 processors, Columbia can churn through the 100 million data points on the capsule's model in a matter of hours.
We actually have some simulations about that. Tim, can you put up the display of the various CEV capsule geometry?
Columbia transforms the rudimentary CAD model into a colorful representation of the airflow across the modified capsule. From this range of solutions, engineers can quickly project how Orion's redesign may affect the capsule's performance.
So here's the one of the alternative geometries with this kind of blunt nose. You can really see how that affects the flow at some of these angles of attack.
What would have taken early spacecraft designers weeks is done in just a few days.
With Columbia as a tool, it allows the designers to get very, very quick feedback and help them to basically do designs in a way that we couldn't do 40 years ago.
Thanks to its extraordinary storage capacity, engineers can look inside Columbia's memory to access empirical spaceflight data from as far back as the Apollo program. Combining proven technology, experience, and empirical data, NASA is using an innovative approach that is expected to save time and money in the development process.
One thing you might say about this particular system is that it could be called a Heritage Plus system, in the sense that the heritage is the shape that we're using. We're using the Apollo capsule shape. We know that very well, and we understand the aerodynamics and the heating and all the other things that go with that. The plus side of it comes from the advancements in technologies that we've had over the last 40 years.
With NASA's experience and cutting-edge computer technology, Orion's design process is now a ping-pong match between computer theory and the real world. Testing in both realms will ensure that the new spacecraft will be innovative and safe. So with the shape now determined, the big question is, can the capsule be built to the engineering specs and the astronauts' needs? Following computer and wind tunnel validations, Orion's design focus shifts to project headquarters near Houston, Texas. Here in Johnson Space Center's Building 9, cockpit design team member Jeff Fox and associate Christy Sowers evaluate and modify Orion's interior layout.
I'm anxious to see these window cutouts.
They calculate the human factor in every aspect of the capsule, right down to the windows.
And this is the one with the insert at the top, right?
Right, so it has 1 inch reduced visibility.
Okay. So why don't we go ahead and take this insert out?
Like pieces of a puzzle, windows, seats, controls, and even the helmets must all work together. To see how changes in one piece might affect another, the two systems integration experts use an adaptable full-scale mock-up.
Well, some of my favorite building materials right now are foam core, like what you see right here. Eventually, the real vehicle will be made out of metal and other exotic materials for obvious reasons, just like all the space vehicle and aircraft are. But in order to get there, I need to use other tools that are inexpensive and easy to prototype and bend in shape and try different things. If I was wearing a helmet, if I had to lean back, it would just obstruct my view. So you have to thrust your head back to try and pick up the horizon, which is probably up here, right? It's very high in the display.
One option, now you've got a large headrest under, we could swap out. Okay. That'll give you a little bit different feel. Significant, right?
That's much different. You know, this is an example of when I lay on a seat and I look up at a display or out the window, I want to put this under my head so I can change the height of my head to different heights. So I have several different little foam core or little foam inserts. Another example of foam is my window size. I have here just a cutout that approximates the shape of a window inside. I have several of those shapes. I know that I have a certain range that will work in the vehicle. Well, I want to be able to plug and play them very quickly to find out what is good for the crew, for the task, and what is good for engineering, for the structure. So I go through a lot of those evaluation periods before I actually can cut metal for the real vehicle. Okay.
So how do you feel about that portion being cut off?
Now we have a little less window view here on the lower edge.
Ergonomics is crucial. While the capsule will be twice the size of Apollo, it's an ongoing challenge to improve the working conditions for the 6 astronauts inside.
In the early part of the design phase, we had a larger diameter for this capsule, 5.5 meters. We shrunk it down to 5 meters. Well, obviously, if you're taking the same crew, the same size people, and you're trying to put them in a smaller space, you're going to have to figure out how to package it. It's kind of like going from a Suburban or a van to a VW. I mean, I'm at my limit over here, assuming these are my 3 prime ones I can see and interact with. I can imagine for somebody that was shorter, you'd have to bring the seat up higher,
right,
which would affect your view to the window, which would affect your view of the displays.
When Jeff Fox and his team decide they have some workable options, it's time to compare notes with potential operators.
How would you rate that window for the task of horizon viewing, grass entry task?
I'd say this one's highly satisfactory. I'd say that one's satisfactory.
Based on his shuttle training, astronaut Jim Dutton provides a practical evaluation of window visibility.
The 605 window gives you a good view from back here. You can actually see out, whereas this window...
This is the stage where engineers and astronauts work closely together.
Look at all this window viewing, reach. There's a lot of things we're doing that are going to influence the suit.
Whereas one brings state-of-the-art engineering insights to the equation, the other adds the practical perspective of spaceflight.
I know you're not really evaluating
well, no,
that,
but
just
yeah.
how that
Well,
plays in.
I haven't done a suited shuttle sim. I mean, we've done it and sat in there, but looking up is really hard with a helmet on.
Primarily, we bring the astronauts into a mock-up like this, a low-fidelity mock-up, where we can get their input. Since they are the operators, they're the people sitting in there, we want to get their feedback so that we know the systems we're designing are going to work for them. They can do the tasks they need to do. From a rendezvous to an ascent to a landing, we want their feedback. What do you think if we had like an Apollo-style bubble canopy type where it's actually a clear bubble? Actually, the base is like back here somewhere and it goes all the way around. Would that make overhead a little more
Any
palatable?
more visibility you can give, yes, is going to help a lot. Yeah. Cool. Nice work.
In Johnson Space Center's Building 16, another full-scale mock-up sits in front of a giant screen. This is an Orion cockpit model called the Rock.
The Rock is the reconfigurable orbiting cockpit, and it is a studio that it has the physical constraints and the physical geometry of a cockpit that we're building. And it includes three-dimensional graphics where you actually look through a foam core and plastic mock-ups of the windows, but it gives you that three-dimensional shape and configuration to allow you to decide where do you need to put your controls, where do you need to put your seats. And today we were studying what size do the windows need to be.
As far as just visibility, the structure, especially if you kind of close this in, the window's not doing you a whole lot.
Using a computer-controlled flight simulation program, cockpit team leader Lee Morin works with Jim Dutton to evaluate the crucial issue of visibility. During a docking maneuver with the International Space Station, Jim now evaluates the proposed size and shape of the windows.
Go in at 10 speed.
10 speed.
Using his hand, Jim checks for any blind spots. His experience of what he needs to see is invaluable to the designers.
Your central view angle is real good. It's just out to the sides. I think that the outer mold line is going to limit you quite a bit.
And I can see this one.
Apart from window characteristics, this practical test underscores the relationship of the windows to the controls.
I think the cross-check to this panel and back to the window is an easier cross-check to make. It's more comfortable than doing the pretty good head tilt down to check this one. I mean, certainly you could do it, but I would have my primary information
as high as possible.
As high as possible, I think, yeah.
There's a very good chance the outcome of this evaluation could affect the design of the whole capsule.
And from here I can see that one.
Yeah.
And I can see this one pretty well.
Studies that we're doing now, which involve things like the shape of the window and what's the geometry of the crew looking out the window and what's the right angle for the window to have as you come up on the space station. Those will be set fairly soon because that involves a lot of setup and tooling to build the outside of the vehicle.
Beyond the implications for Orion's exterior design, Lee's evaluations will influence seat and control placement, taking into account precise measurements.
Right, there's like maybe 2 inches here.
2 inches here and there.
The Rock is continually revised to ensure accurate evaluations in the next design phase.
Does it probably help to have the real windows in there too? Having plate
Well,
glass?
a piece of glass is another issue that has to do. Piece of glass.
Once the windows are set, we then can now look at outfitting the inside of the vehicle with the displays and controls. Go ahead and let's bring up the primary flight display.
Lee builds preliminary control layouts using a powerful computer-aided design studio.
This is our rapid prototyping facility. We actually use this in conjunction with the rock facility. This allows us to prepare notional displays and sample displays that we'll later explore in the rock. You take this and maximize it, Patrick, stretch it out so it gets big.
In the prototype lab, lessons from the Apollo and the shuttle cockpits help Lee design Orion's 21st century control panel. Back in the day, there were at least 2 astronauts at the helm, but that's about to change.
Patrick, could you bring in the switch panel?
For Orion, Lee's challenge is to design a control system for a single operator.
One of the big elements to being able to have one person operate this vehicle is the use of modern avionics or aviation electronics. Electronics have changed a tremendous amount since Apollo. We have in our dashboards of our cars much more capability than the electronics that the Apollo spacecraft had. Patrick, could you bring up the Apollo spacecraft model? This is a mock-up of the Apollo console, a little bit smaller than the actual size, but it has all of the detail and all of the switches and controls that you'd have that the Apollo astronauts used. And the key thing that really strikes you here is that something on the dashboard does only one thing at a time. You have a gauge that just does one thing, or at most a few things, but with the electronic instruments on a piece of computer glass, you're able to have that piece of glass do many different functions. And so that allows us to bring the switches and controls that, for example, in the shuttle, there's over 2,000 switches and controls. In CEV, there'll be many less. It'll be something on the order of 50 to 100.
Each computer conceptualization brings Orion a little bit closer to the launch.
Let's go ahead and close that back to the original setting.
It's all about teamwork. Lee fills Jeff in on his latest ideas for the control panels.
And what we're looking at is using electronic procedures that are embedded here in these displays, like we saw in the rapid prototyping. This is one sample configuration that has 4 logic displays in a T configuration. And we would share these 2 displays in the middle, and then each of us would have our own display on the side. And in between us, we have this console of switches. These would be some very critical emergency switches that both of us would be able to reach in case either one of us had to take some emergency action.
With safety as a key factor, it's most essential to learn from the past and then improve on it. Especially when it comes to heat. Throughout human space travel, it has always been the extreme heat during atmospheric re-entry that has posed the highest risk. Theoretically, Orion's thermal protection system should withstand 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it's time to measure theory against reality. Re-entry into Earth's atmosphere is one of the most dangerous moments in space travel. When the spacecraft is engulfed in a 5,000-degree fireball. These pictures from Apollo 16 illustrate that getting Orion's thermal protection right is a matter of life and death. Electricity, enormous amounts of it, can be used to recreate the extreme heat of re-entry. These transformers are at Ames Research Center, the home of the Interaction Heating Facility. This is where they test everything that must resist extreme temperatures in this room-sized blowtorch called the arc jet. The arc jet's central element is a heater which generates temperatures 2 to 3 times hotter than the surface of the sun. Inside the heater, massive rings of heavy copper cathodes and anodes surround an inner chamber. A powerful electric arc flashes between the copper components to superheat a jet of mixed gases. Literally thousands of water hoses are necessary to keep this superheater cool. Everything is continually checked to prevent devastating accidents. At the other end of the heating element is a vacuum chamber.
4 is coming in.
It simulates the high altitudes where Orion will experience these extreme temperatures.
You got 900 seconds.
In regular cycles, NASA subjects materials to the arc jet's blast. Some may eventually be used in Orion's heat protection system. Samples are fitted with sensors that provide accurate temperature data. This one is called carbon-carbon, an advanced material composed of multiple layers of carbon fibers. Developed for missile nose cones and the leading edges on the space shuttle, it is well suited for structural applications at high temperatures. Could it be useful for Orion?
Clear for 4 in. 4 is coming in.
The sample is mounted on a mechanized armature called the Sting.
900 seconds.
The Sting moves the sample into the jet stream for anywhere from a few seconds up to several minutes. It's a dangerous process. The heating element requires more than 75 megawatts. That's enough electricity to light 75,000 homes. Everything is tightly secured and checked because there's always the potential for a rupture in one of the high-pressure gas or water cooling hoses. In this run, the sample is about to be exposed to temperatures slightly above 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, we're coming down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Back on.
Within a few seconds, the researchers are surprised by something unusual.
You can see the edge. I don't know. You can see the edge. Oh, look at, see that right there under how
This is unexpected. The carbon-carbon begins to flake and burn. One of the composites is breaking down.
It looks like it's sort of melting down, too.
This run raises questions. The material didn't react as predicted.
See that? Well, see that? Came right off. Right. You can see the chunks flying off. No, that's bizarre.
Isn't that funky?
Yeah.
To better understand why, the sample's flaws are meticulously documented for further evaluation. Predictability is an important benchmark. Start to finish, nothing is left to chance, and for a good reason.
The people that are flying on these vehicles are our friends and colleagues, and we want to make sure that we have a system that's protecting them to the maximum extent that's humanly possible in doing something that's so dangerous and so complex as spaceflight. So that's clearly a driving factor in our work in trying to make sure that our colleagues are protected as best we can.
So for Orion's engineers, the thermal protection system is of vital importance. The key component is the heat shield. It's the frisbee-shaped barrier attached to the blunt end of the spacecraft. That's the part of the capsule that will be exposed to the highest temperatures during atmospheric re-entry. The trick here is to get the heat shield to burn off at a predictable and controlled rate. This process is called ablation.
How do electrodes look, Christine?
Your numbers are 2s and 3s.
The ArcJet team is continually testing new materials for Orion's heat shield.
9, 8, 7, 6.
Phenolic impregnated carbon ablator, or PICA, is a prime contender.
1.
Off and in.
It's a composite made from roasted rayon carbon fibers infused with a resin material similar to what billiard balls are made of.
Models in.
Within a few seconds, small pieces begin to burn off.
Models out 10.
It's a good sign. This PICA sample is ablating at the predicted rate. But the material is only one aspect of Orion's thermal protection. Once it is determined how much heat Orion will encounter, the data from these samples will be used for the heat shield design. Heating environment is the domain of the Applied Aeroscience and CFD branch at Johnson Space Center.
What we have here is a block structured grid of the flow on the model that we're going to use to run pre-test simulations using our CFD code.
Is this the 128 cells off body?
Yes.
Level?
Using CFD to analyze the heating, they're searching for the optimal trade-off between heat protection and weight.
And here we have the surface grid, and as you can see down here, it's really tight grid so we can get accurate heat transfer.
Sting gets pretty hot.
Jay LeBeau is the branch chief.
Heat is definitely one of our biggest challenges because we have to accurately predict what the heating environment is so that they can design the thermal protection system to protect the spacecraft structure.
We have a Reynolds sweep here so we can predict what we're going to see in the wind tunnel tests.
NASA designers are walking a fine line between giving Orion the heat protection needed without overloading it. Too little, and the spaceship could burn up. Too much, and it'll be too heavy, forcing weight compromises elsewhere.
There's a high gear ratio to take every pound into orbit. And so every extra pound of thermal protection system that gets put on the vehicle translates into 1 pound of payload that can't be taken up into orbit to help accomplish our mission.
It's a delicate balancing act. Heat protection on the one hand and weight on the other.
The Orion spacecraft will enter the atmosphere at about 25,000 miles per hour. That compares to the shuttle reentry, which enters the atmosphere at about 17,000 miles per hour, which equates to about twice as much kinetic energy when it enters the atmosphere.
Orion's engineers must calculate how much thermal protection the capsule will need to safely transition from the vacuum of space back to Earth, a mission phase called atmospheric reentry. During this stage, the gas in front of Orion's heat shield will reach over 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt any known metal on Earth. At the Arnold Engineering Development Center in Maryland, this specially designed wind tunnel can simulate the speed and heat of atmospheric reentry.
With our wind tunnel testing, we validate our computational tools and the theory that goes into those predictions at the wind tunnel test conditions, and then we use those tools to calculate the flight environments.
At this unique facility called the Hypervelocity Wind Tunnel No. 9, Arnold engineers gather real-world information to validate the aeroscience computer calculations. Before the test, they check each of the 120 sensors that will collect the heating and pressure data. They're embedded in a 7-inch diameter stainless steel model of Orion that's mounted in the test chamber. Inside the chamber, the model will be exposed to speeds of more than Mach 10. It's a dangerous undertaking. Any flaw in the setup could be catastrophic. This steel chamber holds back superheated nitrogen gas under 10,000 pounds of pressure. Once released, it expands into a vacuum created in this nozzle, blasting through the test chamber. The process is triggered when 2 half-inch stainless steel diaphragms are ruptured, allowing the high-pressure nitrogen to escape. The impact of the heated gas on the model simulates the intense temperatures and speed of atmospheric reentry. The nitrogen collides with the model at nearly 4,000 miles per hour. This is called a blowdown. The test will provide a wide range of data. Luminous points will indicate the exact orientation of the model to the gas flow. Ultra-sensitive video cameras capture the shockwave as it impacts the model. The high-speed gas will become denser in the shock region at the blunt end. By bathing the capsule in emerald laser light, a shadow of the shockwave's flow pattern will become visible. It's a technique called Schlieren photography. Every run has the ingredients for a disaster.
Attention all personnel, tunnel room is now being secured for a run.
It's in fact so dangerous that the system is housed in a series of bunkers with foot-thick concrete walls. In case of an explosion, the ceiling is designed to blow off to prevent the walls from falling down.
84 open.
Roger that.
Locking up!
Earlier test runs revealed some disturbing anomalies, which would have created hotspots along Orion's body, where designers are planning to install windows and sensitive antennae. Today's series of tests will provide engineers with new data they can compare with earlier CFD projections.
Bobby, you all set?
The test will be a success if it shows that the shock wave is evenly distributed around the capsule.
3 pumps. We're right on. Drivers on. Let's go ahead and top them off. 38,000. Roger that. Drivers are on. 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
The concussion is enormous. This was real time. What took hours to prepare is over in a quarter of a second. Now the question is whether the engineers were able to get the desired data, captured on high-speed video. The Schlieren images revealed the bow shockwave, a thin line in front of the capsule. The smooth, symmetrical arc shows that there are no unexpected anomalies. Everybody's happy. The test is a success. But this is just one step towards new predictions.
We came here today to discuss the T9 test results that we received about 2 weeks ago. We ran Mach 8 and 10 conditions in the facility. This first Schlieren here is Mach 10, pitching from 0 to 34 degrees angle attack. Right.
Back at Johnson Space Center, the aeroscience team is now moving forward by comparing the computer solution with the wind tunnel test to validate their heating calculations.
This was actually done by some folks out at Ames on the Columbia supercomputer. This is that model condition at 19 degrees. We're actually getting good data on the entire heat shield with the Lorentzian convective heat transfer. That's definitely good. The windward afterbody also...
It's a significant validation of the computational tools used to design Orion's thermal protection system.
Relative to what we saw on the CFD...
Jay LeBeau wonders how the data impacts their research.
So based on what we learned during this testing, what are the implications going forward with the databases that we're producing?
So before, our uncertainties were based off historical data and old test data on Apollo, which probably had a 20% uncertainty on top of just the data. Okay. So now this will quantify our uncertainty, which is vital for our database.
Our computational tools are limited by the accuracy of the models that those tools employ. And so what we need to do is validate those models against any available data that we have. And since we don't have any flight data yet, the closest thing we can get is the experimental measurements.
Chris, how's the access from this point?
Access looks good. The only problem is those pipes in the way.
Working in an evaluation unit for the Ares instrument stage, engineers are looking for ways to make the launch preparations more efficient and safer for the technicians. Don Krupp leads the design team.
Using the physical evaluation units, we've already identified one potential concern. Looking at the accessibility of vent valves, there may not be enough room there.
I think we need to try an alternate location.
I think we should remove the pipe and take the valve off and put it in the upper dome.
Let's try that.
The early use of these evaluation units allows us to do a lot of what-if scenarios very quickly and relatively inexpensively. Can they carry their tools in with them? Where are they going to stand? Can they carry it out? What happens if somebody gets injured? Can we get them out? We now know there's a constraint there, and we can accommodate that constraint in our design.
With many questions still waiting to be answered, some of the toughest involve a capsule's dry landing.
We're kind of free, we're ready to go up.
There's no precedent. It'll be the first in NASA's history, so experimental data are crucial. Getting them is the job of a team that's not afraid to get down and dirty. At the Langley Research Center near Hampton, Virginia, engineers are analyzing the force of the physical impact on Orion's capsule when it finally touches down. With its 250-foot-tall gantry, the full-scale Impact Dynamic Research Facility has been a mainstay of aerodynamic research for over 40 years.
We hit the ground.
2, 1, release.
No one seems to have more fun than these guys. They get to spend their time crashing things. Their job is to measure what happens when things hit the ground. At the end of Orion space journeys, whether from the International Space Station, the Moon, or Mars, the capsule will make a dry landing. The challenge is to find out how Orion will behave when it hits the dirt.
One of these bags has air in it. It must be that one over there.
Currently, one of 3 designated landing sites is in the California desert. Richard Boitnott is the Impact Research Team leader.
This soil is 50% sand, 50% clay mix. This is basically a soil that's used for road building, and so it compacts very well and can compact very hard. We were looking at getting a hardness similar to what we found in the dry lake beds out in California near Edwards.
After its breakneck descent at 25,000 miles per hour, the designers are planning to slow the CEV down to just 20 miles per hour. This team of experts is trying to gather data of the effect each soil type, whether rock, sand, or clay, will have on the landing profile of the capsule. Weighing more than 4,000 pounds, this scale model of Orion is just the right tool. Constructed from high-strength steel, it's equipped with extremely sensitive velocity and acceleration measuring instruments. As in each NASA test, every detail is checked
Tap on 11.
and double-checked. In this drop, the model is tested without airbags to see how far the capsule would skid. The result will help determine the optimal size and location of Orion's landing zone. High-tension cables are attached to guide the model during the drop. To calculate the cable connections that will ensure a 15-degree impact angle, Richard relies on basic engineering tools.
I just do drawings like this is swing 18. These are the lifting cables. The other cables we'll have are basically just for restraint, for getting, and say I have the ground indicates, so the ground's got to be horizontal there, and this is like in the ground position, so I'll be looking, making sure all the cable's clear.
14.7, 14.8.
It's just geometry at this stage. 15.4, 15.5. That looks pretty good. Originally we wanted to go 20, and that was kind of pushing it, so we'll get from the photogrammetry the actual angle.
In the final step, explosive cable cutters are installed. The pyrotechnic devices sever the guide cables just before impact. For this test drop, the model is hoisted over 50 feet off the ground.
Everyone's in the building?
Yeah.
Safe spot?
Power supply on, voltage max. Select switch to gantry.
Data acquisition system triggered.
3, 2, 1, release. Oh man, she went slid further than I thought.
Nice. More than what you thought.
To recreate the capsule's speed at the time of touchdown, the cutters release the model into freefall. High-speed cameras capture the landing angle and impact. Surprisingly, the capsule slides much farther than expected, nearly toppling over. The question is why?
I mean, it didn't leave much of an impact. I mean, the width is just like 1 feet 8 inches.
The narrow and shallow depression indicates this dry desert soil did little to slow the model down. Hardness was a factor. These samples will now be baked to determine moisture content. And to complete the soil profile, a hemispherical penetrometer will tell them just how hard the soil is. Although this was one test in a long series, the accumulated data has led researchers to consider a larger, wetter landing zone for Orion. In the end, one piece of the puzzle will need to be added to another. So far, NASA has met the challenge with imagination and creativity. Their innovative combination of spacefaring heritage and cutting-edge technology has allowed the agency to develop a fresh approach to creating a new spacecraft, fit for the challenges of the 21st century. The big question is, will all the tests and data come back in time to get Orion off the ground, on schedule? And will the theoretical projections and calculations match reality? The truth is that no one will know until the actual liftoff. Until then, the quest goes on for the other components like landers, spacesuits, and habitats. because Orion is just one piece of the Constellation program and NASA's exciting vision for our future.
All that is space related continues with a special of How Do They Do It next on Discovery Science, where we'll show you just how we get to communicate with astronauts when they're high above.